Hello everyone, this is Aaron Fitch from ATFGaming and welcome back to the channel. It's been a long time since we put something up here, and I do want to say there will be a channel update video coming out in the coming days, weeks-ish, explaining what is going to be happening with the channel in the future. There are some things I'm planning that I hope you guys are excited for in the future. But today we are here talking about the bombshell plethora of news that we have gotten in the last couple days about NASCAR schedules, possible IndyCar schedules, and a few other things that we might talk about today, depending on how long this video takes for me to record. So, sit back, get ready. We are going to go through all the details of the new NASCAR schedule that just got released today. And we will go over some rumors about the IndyCar schedule that was also released by Racer and Robin Miller yesterday. So to start out with, we will go through the NASCAR schedule in order, some of the changes of the NASCAR schedule. Compared to this year, obviously, we didn't end up getting the schedule that was intended for this year. So there might be some things that we look at and say, oh, that's new, but it was supposed to happen this year, but it didn't because of COVID and all that stuff. So we'll start off with the Clash that was previously announced to be at the Daytona Road Course. Obviously, it's no longer the first race at the Daytona Road Course since we had that filler race for some of the races that got canceled. So that is the Clash. And then Homestead moved up a week, so Homestead will now be right after Daytona, so we have double Florida action instead of, I think it was Atlanta that came right after it this year. I'm not 100% sure on that, but Homestead's right after. I think that's a great move. If Homestead's not going to be the finale where it belongs, then it might as well be right after Daytona, one of the Daytona races. So I approve of that. I still think Homestead should personally have a chase date, but I'm okay with this. The next thing in order of the schedule is one of the big bombshells that I'm not sure how I feel about yet. It's the spring Bristol race being changed to a dirt track layout of Bristol. Now, from what I understand, Bristol has done this in the past, not for Cup Series. It was for a lower level series, but it'll be interesting. I'm not like 100% against it like a lot of people are. I do think it's unfortunate that we have to take a Bristol short track race out of it, and B, we can't do NASCAR's first Cup Series race at a dirt track in 40 years at an actual dirt track. I think that's unfortunate. But when you look at dirt tracks that are out there right now, there are not really any dirt tracks that can hold, 40 car pit roads. There's not nearly as many dirt tracks that can hold a big crowd that the Cup Series can bring, especially if it's its first dirt race in 40 years. There's going to be demand for people to go see it. I mean, I can tell you right now, I got a text message from a family member like immediately after this announcement came out, and we're already looking at going to the Bristol dirt race. Of course, COVID relying, but I think for the situation that we have now with it being so demanding on infrastructure, these are reasons that Iowa hasn't gotten a Cup race, because there's no infrastructure for traffic, parking, having all three series there at the same time. There's no infrastructure for that. And tracks like Eldora and some of the other popular dirt tracks in the area, they don't have the infrastructure either. So I'm okay with them doing this. Now, a lot of people aren't, and I get that, but I'm okay with them trying this out at Bristol. We'll see how it goes. A lot of people are predicting a train wreck. I'm also probably predicting a train wreck. It depends on how the format is. Are we going to do live pit stops? Are we going to do stages? Are we going to have any sort of semblance to a normal race, or is it going to be kind of a heavily modified format to kind of fit, the more the local short track, local dirt track type model, like inverts and heat races and stuff like that they do with the Eldora truck race, or they have done in the past, is the question. Now, another thing, this is the Expandian trucks have not been released yet, or ARCA. We know a couple things about that schedule. I am curious to see if Eldora is still going to be on the schedule or not. Obviously, we didn't do Eldora this year with the truck series because of COVID, but we will see what happens in the future. So that's the Bristol Dirt Track. Next big thing is there are 2 Atlanta races and 2 Darlington races. All for that. If you're going to take out a 1.5-mile tracks that we'll talk about later of Kentucky and Chicagoland, might as well give, honestly, the best 1.5-mile track on the circuit right now, Atlanta, 2 races. And Darlington produced great racing and had multiple races with the COVID reschedule. So and all of those races performed great. So I'm all for those 2 tracks having 2 races. Also announced by Steve O'Donnell on Twitter today was that Darlington and Nashville, which we'll talk about a little later, will be using the low horsepower package, or not low horsepower, the low downforce package, the high horsepower package that short tracks and road courses have been using this year, versus the low downforce. Sorry, I keep getting downforce and horsepower in my head. It's just mixed up. I'm not a car guy, so don't blame me on this. The high downforce, low horsepower package that we have at 1.5 miles right now will not be used at Darlington, which I think is a great call. Darlington acts more like a short track than its 1.5-mile brethren. And Nashville, I don't know a ton about the Nashville circuit myself, but I think that that's a good call. All right, moving on from that, we are moving on to the first of the road course announcements, obviously besides the Clash, which is already announced. NASCAR is heading off to COTA, Circuit of the Americas, which is the track that the last 5 years, I think, has hosted the United States Grand Prix for Formula One, and last year hosted an IndyCar race that Colton Herta won his first race at. I'm interested to see how that track is going to work with NASCAR's. I know it's been tested. Tony Stewart and the 2 Haas F1 drivers, I know, drove a stock car around it, and I believe there was like a Martin Truex Jr. tested like when he was at Furniture Row still, the track. At one point. So there have been stock cars around it, and obviously there must be data saying that it'll work with stock cars. There's a long back stretch that leads to a nice little passing zone that will work well. The front stretch is all uphill that leads to a giant braking zone. I think those 2 places will do really well with passing zones. And then there's a lot of S's and back and forths, kind of like Sonoma, like the beginning of Sonoma. As you go up the hill, there's these back and forth S's. Times that by like 3, and that's COTA for you guys. COTA, COTA, Circuit of the Americas, is what it is referred to a lot in speaking and passing. So that is an interesting track. I'm going to get on a racing game of some sort. I'm not sure if COTA is on Project Cars 2 or not, but if it's not, I'll try it on a Assetto Corsa. And I want to run a stock car on there and see what it feels like. And I'm going to probably do that for a couple of the other new road courses as well. But anyway, moving on. AllStar Race. The way to convince Eddie Gossage and Texas Motor Speedway to allow COTA on the track, because there's been a lot of friction between those 2, and even having the F1 race and the Texas Motor Speedway race on the exact same weekend a couple years ago. That's how much friction there is between those 2 tracks. Convincing Eddie Gossage to relinquish one of his dates, one of his regular season cup dates, to COTA had to have a big incentive for him, and in his mind, having the All-Star Race at Texas is that incentive. Now, All-Star Race at Texas is going to be awful unless if they come up with a really cool package and have a bunch of twists and stuff, because they're going to have to produce the crap out of that race, because Texas has been one of the worst tracks on the circuit since they did the redesign of turns 1 and 2. And that stands for NASCAR and IndyCar. It's been awful. So putting it as the All-Star Race, while it's in good spirits for letting Coda on the schedule, it's going to be a really bad All-Star Race, in my opinion, unless if they really get something together with the package. Maybe run the track backwards or something. I don't know. They're going to have to do something to get that race to be good, in my opinion, because Texas has not been good since the redesign. So, especially after coming off of moving the All-Star Race to Bristol this year, which, granted, was not as exciting as maybe we expected, but it was still better than some of the Charlotte races we've had in the past, and will for sure be better than Texas, again, unless if they come up with some massive scheme to make it better. So that's the All-Star Race at Texas. Nashville. This was a previously announced thing. Nashville's going to be on the schedule. I think it's great to get that market in there. We've been having the banquet, the end of the season championship banquet at Nashville the last couple of years, as well as, some various activities revolving around that in the town with people, and it seems like they always get a really good reception in Nashville. So I'm really glad we can get to that market, especially with us removing Kentucky off the schedule. There's nothing really in that central area besides Atlanta and Talladega. So that's really a good thing to do, and I really think that I said earlier, I don't know much about the Nashville track itself. So I'm not one to say how good the racing is going to be, stuff like that. Again, it's going to be using the low downforce package like Darlington, so I would assume it's going to be halfway decent racing, but we'll see. But I am happy that they're getting that market into the schedule. Obviously, NASCAR stereotypes, they always have country music to introduce all the Fox in Fox races and NBC races. They always have country music theme song and stuff like that. So I think that's a real opportunity to get some country music stars, get some people like that at the track for the race, national anthem and all that stuff. I think it's a really good opportunity to do that and expand that already big fan base for NASCAR, in my opinion, and actually give them a race, which they've been wanting for a while. Moving on, this is something that was supposed to happen this year, did happen this year, not in the way that it was intended, but they're going to do again next year, is the Pocono doubleheader. It is the only doubleheader on the schedule, so there's no, like, Michigan doubleheader, or, there was one other doubleheader, I can't remember where it was this year, Dover doubleheader. So there's no other doubleheaders on the schedule, obviously. Who knows what will happen in the world next year, but they wanted to try it with fans and see what the fan reaction is, and I understand that. Pocono doubleheader, as a TV watching person, is absolutely awful, because Pocono is not a good track anymore. But as a fan, you have doubleheader cup, you maybe have Xfinity truck, 5 races on a weekend. That might be worth going to. I could see going to that. I mean, I went to the Gateway race because there were 2 IndyCar races, truck, ARCA, and Indy Pro 2000 race. That's 5 races in 2 days. So I was really excited for that. So maybe it'll work for Pocono. I don't know. As somebody who watches it on TV, it's awful. But maybe for somebody going and enjoying the weekend, enjoying the atmosphere, hopefully we're relatively back to normal by that time. We'll see. And we'll see what happens there. Next is another new road course. Actually, it's the next new road course. It's the last new road course, I think, technically. Is Road America. Xfinity has run at Road America the last couple of years. They've been decent racing. I should have looked back to try to recollect myself on the track, because Road America, Mid Ohio, and Mosport, Canadian Tire, all just kind of blend together in my head as tracks that I'm really bad at in, like, the NASCAR heat games, and they just kind of blend together, and I don't really remember anything about them. So I think Road America will be a good track from the characteristics that I can remember. I think that's the track that Jeremy Clements won his race at, with the really good pit strategy at the end. Um, so I think it'll be a good track. Again, NASCAR seems to be going all out on road courses. I'm cool with that. Maybe we can get some more, IndyCar folk or, washed up F1 folk, to do some races there. Um, with 6 road courses on the schedule, I think that's definitely a possibility to maybe bring back the road ringer, so to speak. Um, but so that's there. We got the Indianapolis road course, which the Xfinity Series ran on earlier this year, but Cup did not. Is replacing the Brickyard 400. It's not even going to be called the Brickyard 400 anymore. Um, so that's definitely going to be interesting. I would say the Xfinity race was pretty good. Xfinity race, the ending was pretty good. I don't remember a lot from the early portions of the race, but the ending was outstanding. The IndyCar races at the Indy Road Course have been very lackluster, and I'll get to that later when we talk about IndyCar. Um, so we'll see what Cup does. Obviously, the Brickyard 400 has been kind of lackluster the last couple years. This year was pretty good, mainly because of the tire issues. And the problem with that is obviously it's putting a lot of people in danger because there were pretty high level of wrecks at Indy this year. But that was the only thing that made the race interesting, which is really kind of sad. And obviously, you don't want to promote that kind of stuff. So I think going to the Indy Road Course is a good idea. We'll try it out, see what happens, see if the Cup cars run well there. If not, we can explore going back to Indy. We could go to IRP or ORP. That would be great. The short track that the Xfinity and trucks used to run at, ORP, and I think the ARCA series still runs there, or at least like the K&N series, which is now part of the ARCA banner. I think they still run there now. But I think that is what should be happening, but obviously it's not, and there seems to be a full-fledged effort to never have that track on the NASCAR schedule again for some reason. I can't explain that, but yeah. So we'll see how the Indy Road Course does. Brickyard 400 is no more. So it's kind of the end of an era. It's kind of sad to see. One of those crown jewels. And obviously, when it first started, there was a ton of fans, high prestige race. But as it goes on, ever since that tire debacle, what was it, 2012 or something? That basically caused the competition caution every 15 laps. Indy has not been good, has not had fans, and it's just been a disappointment. So we'll see if the road course drums up any more fan support and any better racing. Moving on next, Michigan loses one of its dates. Sad for me as a Michigander, but I can understand that Michigan hasn't necessarily been, the best racing, hasn't had the best fan support. And I think consolidating all of that into one Michigan race is good. Obviously, you don't want to lose Michigan off the schedule because of the significance to the manufacturers and, Detroit being so important for the development of the car and manufacturers, Ford and all those guys. So I definitely think keeping the Michigan track on the schedule is important. But consolidating it to one race, I think, is a decent idea. The playoffs chase, however you call it, is the same. It's exactly the same. And the race before is exactly the same. So it's Daytona and then the playoffs as we see it this year, which has not been impacted by any of the worldwide issues. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. Round 1 was very interesting. At this point, we have not seen how round 2, round 3, and how the championship race is going to look. But I said this last year, and I stand by it this year. I think it's a good mixture of tracks. The thing that I don't like about the playoff schedule is that it does draw all the really good races there. It has Bristol, Darlington, and a bunch of short tracks, which takes those tracks out of the rest of the season, unless they have 2 races, obviously. But the middle part of the season is so dull, usually. Now, obviously, they're trying to combat that with some road courses this year, But that's the battle that you have to face. Making the playoffs really good involves having those tracks there, obviously. But taking those races away from the middle of the calendar really makes the middle of the calendar dull. And that's been a problem NASCAR's had for years. I mean, 2 Pocono races within 4 races, Michigan's, New Hampshire's, Kentucky's, those are usually the tracks in the middle of the schedule, and they're usually not fun, especially now that you take Daytona out of the 4th of July slot, which is this year going to be Road America, I believe, at the 4th of July race. So I'm cool with that. Um, it really makes the middle of the schedule kind of dull. But I think adding some of the road courses back in is a good call. Um, so the playoff schedule is the same. I think they said Texas and Kansas might flip around due to some music festival or something. That might have happened this year too, but the festival got canceled. Um, so that might be the only change there is. But uh, and another thing to note about that, Phoenix is still the championship race. Now, when that was announced last year, a lot of us were hoping, oh, maybe the championship race would be rotated between some tracks, and there's still some hope for it. Obviously, they had to get a schedule together now. We don't know how Phoenix is going to go for the championship race. Phoenix produced a pretty okay race. Now that it's back on the low downforce package, um, I think that it should be a decent race as well here for the championship race, and I think I still want to see the championship race rotated, but I think in the situation that we're in right now, leaving Phoenix there for another year is good. If Phoenix becomes the permanent um, championship race, then I might have a few more issues, but we're okay with that for now. Now, there's 2 more things we want to talk about with NASCAR, and then we gotta quickly go over to IndyCar. I've obviously ranted a lot here on NASCAR because that's what I focus my channel on and my personal life on. So we briefly touched on this. No Kentucky in Chicago. Good riddance to Kentucky. Can't stand that track. Chicago does have a little bit of uniqueness to it compared to other mile and a half with the curved backstretch and stuff, but it hasn't really produced any good racing. Obviously, you don't really want to take that market out of the equation with Chicago. Granted, the track is still like half hour, 45 minutes out of Chicago, but I think those are 2 good tracks to remove. Obviously, I would have preferred Texas to go get the axe, but Texas is big track, produces a lot of fans every year, so that's not going anywhere anytime soon. And then another thing that was announced a couple weeks ago was the whole California Auto Club Speedway redesign from one of the biggest non-restrictor plate tracks on the circuit to a tiny short track, which I'm very fascinated in to see how that's going to happen, how the construction project's going to go. I think it's a good concept of having, they said, the straights be like Martinsville, that the corners be like Bristol. I think that's really interesting. You're going to be able to carry a lot more speed with longer straights and the high banked turns. So I'm very interested to see how that works out. Obviously, we won't know until it happens. So that's the end of the NASCAR portion. If you're only here for NASCAR, then nice seeing you. But we're gonna talk about IndyCar a little bit. There was a rumored schedule going around. Robin Miller, who is one of the oldest and most well-respected IndyCar reporters, put out this article that kind of went through a proposed schedule based on the information that he has. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. The IndyCar schedule has kind of fluctuated back and forth. This year was supposed to be a pretty big year as far as trying some new things. Richmond was supposed to be back on the schedule. We would have Texas and Coda and all the other tracks that they had already. Gateway. I think there was a new road course that they were supposed to do that didn't end up happening. But now this year, going into next year, it's not good. The IndyCar schedule looks like absolute crap. If it's really kind of sad when you look at all the good changes NASCAR's making, or at least attempting to make. We'll see if it actually ends up paying off or not. But IndyCar schedule looks like absolute crap compared to that. We've got a couple good things happening. They really wanted to have an oval race before the Indy 500. And they've accomplished that by having Texas right before they go to Indy. But it's a double header, and Texas has not been good since the repave. We talked about that in the NASCAR portion. It has not been good. So having a doubleheader there, while it may please Eddie Gossage and may bring in some decent fans, I'm not too hyped up about it. Maybe it'll be same week as trucks. I know they've done that in the past. We'll see what happens. The Detroit doubleheader's back after the Indy 500 again. That usually produces some interesting racing. I want to go there at some point. It's on the Belle Isle, right outside Detroit. So I really want to go there at some point, but we'll see how it does. A thing that I'm not super happy about is they're doing a second Indianapolis road course race. Now, traditionally, the last 5 years or so, they've done a road course race right before they kick it into high Indy 500 gear. With like the month-long practice sessions and qualifying and stuff. And that's still happening this year. But now there's another Indy road course race later on in the season that will line up with the NASCAR Cup Series and the Xfinity Series. Similar to how it did this year with the Xfinity Series, but now you're going to add the Cup Series onto the road course as well. So that's going to be interesting. IndyCar's really not produced a good product on that track. Well, we saw a great race for the Xfinity Series. It's going to be a real shame if IndyCar gets outshined by NASCAR at that track because, IndyCars, they run road courses for their primary living, so to speak. And if NASCAR comes in first race at the track and they outshine IndyCar, it's not going to look good for IndyCar. IndyCar has been on a steady progression of getting better, having more fans, better TV ratings, getting more lucrative drivers. But if they get outshone by NASCAR or Indy, I think it's going to be a bad look for them. Which is why they haven't been doing double headers, because there's always that fear of them getting outshone, or vice versa. If NASCAR gets outshone on an oval by IndyCar, then that's not going to look good for NASCAR either. So I think that's a lot of the reason why there hasn't been any double headers up until this point. But obviously now with Roger Penske owning IndyCar, and there's a lot more crossover. Obviously Penske owns both IndyCar and NASCAR teams, and now he owns the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the whole of IndyCar. There's going to be some more crossover, and I think that's great for fans. Now, obviously, we'll see how good it is for the industry in a couple years' time, but it's great for fans. I'm all for having both series at the track, but we'll see how it works for the industry. Now, we briefly touched on it, but Richmond was supposed to be on the schedule this year for the first time in like 10 years, and then it got canceled because of COVID. But and it's not back on the schedule. They removed it from the schedule, and it sounds like that has a lot of NASCAR influence because it is a track owned by NASCAR now, and it sounds like NASCAR just kind of pulled the plug on the whole idea. They were struggling to get a title sponsor for the race. It didn't seem like it was drumming up that much enthusiasm. It probably would have been a good race. I mean, IndyCar races at short tracks have the potential to be good, but sounds like NASCAR just pulled the plug on it, and it's a shame to see. In addition, there's also rumors that there's not going to be Iowa. Now that hasn't been confirmed or denied yet, but there's a chance that Iowa might not be on the IndyCar schedule either. So that removes your only two like short ovals from the circuit of IndyCar, and that's a real shame. And in addition to that, in the article, it was also saying that there's rumors of NASCAR just completely shutting down the track and selling the land for Iowa, which would be a real shame. It's a really unique track. Now, I mentioned it earlier, there's a reason it's not on the Cup schedule. There's just not enough infrastructure for traffic and parking and stuff of the like. But it's really a shame to see that kind of track that usually produces some decent racing get shut down like that. But that, again, it's just a rumor. It's not confirmed yet. Another thing that I'm really puzzled by in this schedule is that IndyCar is now not going to Circuit of the Americas. I find that really puzzling. Why would you not go there in a year that NASCAR is also going there? That's a prime doubleheader opportunity, first of all. I just don't understand why Coda, if this is a Circuit of the Americas decision, which I'm not sure it is, I'm not sure what the optics are on that, but if it is a Circuit of the Americas decision to just basically tell IndyCar to go away while bringing in NASCAR, I don't get that. Now, if there's IndyCar-based reasons, then so be it. But it put on a really good race 2 years ago. Obviously, this year we didn't get the race because of COVID. So I don't get it. I don't get why they would do that. Um, I don't get why they wouldn't want as many races as they can get. But it just makes no sense to me. But replacing that race is a brand new street course at Nashville. Again, they're tapping into the same market that NASCAR is trying to tap into. I'm not sure what the schedule looks like as far as when these things are happening, but that's another prime doubleheader opportunity. I don't know what the logistics would look like, so don't quote me on this. But Nashville Oval for a Cup and the street race for IndyCar, that would be a really cool thing to have a doubleheader on same week, or at least 1 week apart from each other. But obviously, street courses take a lot of time to prepare. They influence the flow of traffic and parking and all that stuff. So I don't know. That probably wouldn't be feasible. But I am looking forward to seeing another street course on the IndyCar circuit. Usually, those produce the best racing. In my opinion, St. Petersburg, stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. But those are the main changes. But I just want to point out that IndyCar, which has been known for being the best series that has both road courses and ovals, and excel and have the best drivers for both ovals and road courses. I mean, you got drivers from F1, Marcus Ericsson, Takuma Sato, former Formula One drivers, best road course racers in the world. And now you're getting some guys from NASCAR. You're having Jimmy Johnson come over and do some NASCAR races, who is obviously 7-time champion in NASCAR, so he is one of the best NASCAR oval racers. Granted, he's going to be doing road courses primarily. But now you're having a shift. IndyCar, it's a 17 race schedule, but it's only 4 oval races on 3 tracks. That's not good, in my opinion, to limit the ovals. Now, obviously, IndyCar is going to forever be fighting this battle of it's much more dangerous to do an IndyCar race at a high-speed oval. I mean, you can just see the history of IndyCar. Obviously, the Dan Weldon crash is something that is still fresh in my mind. You got Justin Wilson, who died at Pocono. It's always a risk for IndyCar to do high-speed ovals, which is why they're taking them off the schedule. But but also taking off Richmond and Iowa, that doesn't make sense to me. Why would you want to have a schedule of a series that is so diverse as IndyCar, but you have 17 races and only 4 of them are on ovals? Obviously, you got the Indy 500, and then you have 2 races at Texas, and then you have 1 race at Gateway. That's it. That's not exciting to me as a guy who primarily watched NASCAR, who has now expanded his horizons to IndyCar and F1, and even endurance racing to a little bit. That's not exciting to me, and that's a fan base that IndyCar is desperately trying to tap into, because IndyCar always constantly gets beat by NASCAR in ratings, so they're trying to tap into it a little bit. But only having 3 oval tracks, 4 races, that's just not cutting it for me. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. This is longer than I had hoped to do this, but there's a lot of news. Again, look out for a channel update video if you've made it this long in the video. First of all, congratulations. Thank you very much for listening to me rant and ramble about NASCAR and IndyCar schedules of all things. But look out for a channel update video in the coming days. I do have some plans for some things and stuff to actually get the channel back up and rolling again soon. but we will see what happens. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to see more content from ATF Gaming, be sure to hit that red subscribe button. It really means a lot to me, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.